When people around the world think of Brazil, the first images that often come to mind are football legends performing the Joga Bonito. Carnival dancers moving to the rhythm of samba, or golden beaches like the Copacabana. These are all part of Brazil's identity, but there is another side to the country that is just as fascinating: its cities. Brazil is not only a land of natural wonders, but also of some of the most extraordinary urban landscapes on the planet. Here, cities grow in ways that challenge both imagination and geography. And what my European mind can't comprehend is that these cities are absolutely massive. Metropolises sprawl endlessly across hills and valleys, with high-rise apartments as far as the eye can see. In some places, informal settlements called favelas climb steep mountainsides, sometimes right next to glittering luxury condos. Elsewhere, entire cities have been carved directly out of the rainforest, isolated from the rest of the country by thousands of kilometers of jungle. What makes Brazil's urban world so fascinating is the stark contrast. Colonial streets and century-old churches stand in the shadow of futuristic skyscrapers. Wealth and poverty exist just meters apart, shaping the culture and daily life of millions. Natural landscapes, towering granite peaks, lush rainforests, sweeping coastlines often define how these cities grow, forcing people to adapt and innovate in ways unlike anywhere else. So let's dive in where beyond beaches, samba and football lies a story of urban extremes. In this video we are going to explore 4 of Brazil's most remarkable cities to see what makes them so unique. Manaus is a city that feels like it shouldn't exist in that size. In the heart of the Amazon rainforest, on the confluence of the Amazonas and the Rio Negro River, thousands of kilometers away from Brazil's coastal cities, rises a metropolis of more than 2 million people. It is a place where dense urban sprawl and untouched jungle collide, and where the line between civilization and wilderness is drawn with almost no transition at all. The city first rose to prominence during the rubber boom of the late 19th century, when a sudden wave of wealth transformed this remote outpost into a booming urban center. But Manaus, as we know it today, really took shape in the 1960s, when the Brazilian government created a free trade zone. Overnight, factories, warehouses and logistics hubs appeared, attracting multinational companies and turning this isolated rainforest city into one of Brazil's most important industrial centers. Much of this industry sits on the eastern edge of Manaus, where vast industrial parks push directly into the jungle. Warehouses pour across hillsides that had to be carved and leveled, while highways cut into thick vegetation, creating a landscape where concrete and rainforest meet in a very stark contrast. And that contrast defines Manaus. In the city center are high-rises, colonial buildings and houses that seem to float on the water of the Amazonas. Yet just beyond the last neighborhood, the forest swallows everything in a whole. No suburbs, no gradual fade, just a sudden return to the endless jungle. Manaus is a city of extremes, an improbable metropolis born from global trade and sustained by industry, standing as both an outpost of modern life and a reminder of the raw power of nature surrounding it. Sao Paulo is unlike almost any other city on Earth. With over 20 million people in its metropolitan area, it stretches endlessly in every direction. An urban landscape so vast that from above, it looks more like a concrete continent than a city. What defines Sao Paulo most is not one iconic landmark, but the sheer density and scale of its skyline. District after district after district, filled with high-rise apartment blocks as far as the eye can see. This fabric took shape over decades of rapid rapid migration. Millions of people from all across Brazil and abroad poured into the city in search of opportunity, and Sao Paulo had to grow upward and outward at the same time. Instead of a single dense city center, entire neighborhoods are filled with towers, creating a patchwork of vertical neighborhoods that merge into one another with almost no clear boundary. The geography also played a role. Built on a plateau of rolling hills and valleys, the city expanded in every direction, with each new ridge and plain being covered by housing. Highways and rail lines tie these areas together, but the demand for space keeps pushing construction higher and higher. Even today, it is rare to find broad suburban zones. Instead, Sao Paulo's sprawl is overwhelmingly vertical. What makes it so striking is the repetition. Block after block of high-rises, mixed with dense red-roofed but flat districts and punctuated by avenues of traffic and scattered clusters of office towers, from a skyline that seems endless. Let me definitely know if you want to have an in-depth cover of one of Brazil's megacities. Salvador might be one of the most fascinating cities in Brazil, because at first glance it looks almost impossible to even build a city here. The landscape is a maze of steep hills, valleys and cliffs dropping straight into the Atlantic Ocean. Instead of flattening or reshaping the terrain, the city simply grew over it. Neighborhoods climb up the hillsides, cling to slopes and spread across the hilltops in a way that feels almost random. Why would she even build a city here? With 2.9 million residents, Salvador de Bahia is the fourth largest city in Brazil and grew dramatically because it was founded as Brazil's first colonial capital and became a major port and trade hub later on. The topography in this location creates a striking contrast. Informal settlements built down the hillsides in dense clusters of houses, while just a street or two above, larger roads and high-rises dominate the ridgelines. The city feels split into layers, with communities stacked vertically on the same hill, sometimes separated only by a sharp drop. And when these hills meet the ocean, the cliffs can be dramatic, leaving little space for traditional waterfront, but giving Salvador some of the most distinctive coastlines of any Brazilian city. Even modern infrastructure reflects these challenges. One of the city's metro lines runs through a deep valley between neighborhoods, passing beneath countless houses without stopping, and then suddenly emerges with a station placed right in the middle of a highway interchange.
What?
It's a perfect example of how Salvador's planning can feel chaotic, improvised and disconnected from the daily life around it. Yet that's also part of what makes Salvador so mind-blowing. The geography forces the city to be irregular and unpredictable, producing a landscape where dense hillsides, steep cliffs and fragmented infrastructure all coexist. Salvador may not feel like it was carefully planned, but it has an energy and complexity that makes it unlike any other city in Brazil. Rio de Janeiro is often called one of the most beautiful cities on earth. And it's not hard to see why. The city is wedged between the Atlantic Ocean and dramatic granite mountains, Sugarloaf Rock rising straight out of the bay, and Corcovado crowned by the Christ the Redeemer statue. Few urban landscapes anywhere combine such striking natural scenery with such a dense, vibrant metropolis. But these same mountains and steep slopes also explain one of Rio's defining features, the favelas. For decades, as the city's population exploded, there simply wasn't enough flat land to build formal housing. Wealthier neighborhoods claimed the beaches and valleys, while the poor were pushed onto the hillsides. Informal settlements grew rapidly, spreading over almost every available slope. Today, hundreds of favelas dot the city, home to over 1 million people. Life in these communities is a world apart from the postcard images of Copacabana. In the favelas, streets are often narrow and winding, infrastructure is limited, and many houses were built without formal planning. At the same time, they are vibrant, self-organized neighborhoods with their own culture, economy, and sense of community. The contrasts are immense. Just a few hundred meters can separate luxury beachfront apartments from densely packed hillside homes. Rio's geography also leaves little space for expansion, which is why the city's central airport, for example, Santos Dumont, sits right on the edge of downtown, with planes taking off and landing directly over the bay. It's a reminder of how tightly Rio is squeezed between the sea and the mountains. Rio de Janeiro is a city of extremes. Spectacular natural beauty, sharp social divides, and urban life shaped by terrain as much as by history. It is both breathtaking and challenging. A place where paradise and struggle exist side by side on the same hills. From a metropolis carved out of the Amazon rainforest to an endless sea of skyscrapers, to a city clinging to cliffs and valleys, and finally to one of the most spectacular urban landscapes on Earth. Brazil's cities show every extreme of how humans build and live. They are chaotic and beautiful, improvised and ambitious, shaped by geography, history, and culture all at once. Together, they reveal a country where urban life is as fascinating and complex as the samba rhythms and football it's known for.